I am Steve Wilkerson, North American Director of Chemical Sales for ResourceWise. And really what I'm doing is I want to invite everybody to come, check out what we got and, really start this conversation going with what's happening in the world right now. It's we live in such tumultuous times. I always have trouble saying that word, tumultuous. But really, things are so chaotic, right? And as we monitor what happens in our markets and in our daily lives, right, we do our best to predict what's going to happen to the future and try to be prepared for whatever might be around the next corner. And I tell you, every time that we have one of these world events, it's like we got to reshuffle the deck and retake a look at things. So make sure you reach out to us, ResourceWise, and just keep us in your thoughts whenever something happens like this Venezuela conflict. So be sure to keep us in mind. Now, kind of taking a look at what's happening, a little bit more granular, a little bit more micro focused on these markets. One thing that we're constantly dealing with is some negative attitudes is how I would put that. But a lot of doom and gloom in the marketplace, right? That's what we hear all the time. But I do want to say that there are some benefits to what's happening out there. We're constantly monitoring the construction markets and what's going on in automotive. And, a lot of people are always saying, well, it's doom and gloom. But in reality, what's really happening is demand is changing. So, we've reached a pivotal moment in history where we have AI kind of coming out of nowhere, right? It's like now all of a sudden AI is in your life. And then at the same time, we're kind of dealing with a changing of the guard in terms of generational change. We've had the boomers that have basically led this economy and led this world for a very long time. And now we're starting to see, folks retiring and the changing of the guard and kind of going into a new era, one where folks have been raised with technology their entire lives. And so now we're really going to get to the nuts and bolts of what we can do, right, with integrating our lives with computers and integrating our lives with technology. Now, one thing that we can do is we can study prices. And I have this certain price right here. I have it already pulled up. It's a product called TOTM. And, I always say when you see markets fluctuating like this, it's like a roller coaster, right? And this is the TOTM price in West Europe. But we've seen this similar market in a lot of different markets, especially in North America on TOTM as well. Now, TOTM, it's a PVC plasticizer. It's really used when needed for heat resistance and performance. And we've recently seen a change in the demand due to what's going on in the data center side of things. Now we're starting to see more power needed. You're having a lot more, electricity is the main thing, but you have more information that's being pressed through these through cabling and wiring, as well as just insulation as well. But as we've kind of gone through this phase, we've already been constructing the data centers. We've already have a few popping up, one in Kentucky, one in Austin, Texas, in the polyester polyol sector, where you have a lot of that construction material. We already saw folks go and grab that market share just immediately, knowing that was coming. And so what we want to do is we want to try to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And this has been extremely hard to predict. So take a look at TOTM here. We're using wiring cable. We had in the price change is astronomical. We're talking about almost 100% change in price in a single year back in 25. And at the second half of 25, we see just another collapse of the price to basically rebalance and get back to a normal level. Really what's causing that is that supply-driven product, right? Supply-driven markets. And so, supply discipline has been what has been keeping us afloat. Let's go ahead and jump into some other topics real quick. If we go ahead and take a look at the ethylene markets and olefins real quick, we can definitely see the downward trends that we've been experiencing lately. And I think on the cost side, it hasn't been too bad. And I think right now we've kind of hit a pretty nice spot for, I think, even ethylene producers to where they're feeling comfortable. You know, you got a contract price that's still in the 30s. You have a spot price that's between 16 and 18 cents. So it's been kind of stable recently. Same with the propylene markets. I think that the days of high propylene prices have definitely gone by the wayside. Yeah, and so same in North America, really you've seen the propylene price kind of hit basically a 1 year lull, right? Same with the spot price. It's really kind of found its low end. You know, actually the spot price is the lowest it's been since 2020. So yeah, same with caustic soda, right? We were having a great time with caustic soda a couple of years back, but you know, kind of a stable price, I guess, moving up with you know, just some chlorine issues, right? That's really the chlorine's driving what's going on in the caustic soda market. You know, it's hard to talk about anything other than how the markets have been subdued, but this is the price of deflation, right? So we've seen it on all the markets. MEG has definitely hit, you know, what we would consider the North American bottom almost. DEG is doing the same, and TEG all over the place. So really on the glycol side of things, which is the bottom end of ethylene consumption, so the last 20-25% of ethylene consumption, you have all three homologs, MEG, DEG, and TEG, reaching the bottom of where they need to be in their marketplaces. So there's not much movement downward left for these guys. And, you know, if you see ethylene spikes occur in 2026, that's really going to put pressure on these producers to decrease their operating rates, because we're in a supply-driven market. And the supply-driven market is all dependent on how well margins are performing. And right now, these prices are not conducive to any type of cost fluctuations. We saw that the natural gas price hit basically $4 per million BTU just earlier, you know, in December. But now we're back at some pretty good natural gas prices. I think we're kind of flirting with the line a little bit. Let's see here. So if we take a look at methanol, I think methanol is a very interesting market because of the decoupling which has occurred from the contract price and the spot price. We've seen dramatic differences, and in fact, we've even saw 15% or 15 cent per gallon increase on the contract price. But we're not really seeing that in the domestic side of things. You know, maybe just a couple cents up, but nothing like what the price increases that we've seen. And for the most part, you know, demand has been subdued due to what's going on with the bio-based diesel production, right? So that has really had an effect on the demand of methanol. But at the same time, you have basically another supply-driven market where the major players can basically dictate what's going on with the contract price. Now, the spot price is going to be independently negotiated, and again, that's where we really come in. We're going to monitor that for you guys. We're going to be able to provide you with some great intel that's going to help you with your methanol buying. So, you know, this decoupling of the contract price for the spot price has been something that we've been keeping a close eye on, and we're helping our customers, or helping our clients make ends meet, make heads or tails of what's going on in these situations. All right, last but not least, we're going to take a peek at one more. Let's see here. One market that I thought was very interesting was the UPR market, unsaturated polyester resins. I think this market is one that we cover extremely well. Sam, he is our analyst on the UPR side of things, and we have an independent marker that not many other publications have on UPR, which is great. You know, we really haven't seen too much changes on the downstream side of things. So you're going to start to see margins from the downstream side of things really start to kind of pick up, right? You got, you know, UPR industry hasn't really gone down. You haven't really seen that on the PET side of things either. You know, not too many dramatic swings in those marketplaces. So really there is some margin out there, and it's on the downstream side of things. Well, for the most part, I just want to thank everybody for listening and staying tuned. I'll be posting these about once a week, hopefully providing you guys with some very good information that you find valuable. If there's anything you would really like to take a peek at, just give me a call, give me a buzz on LinkedIn, or shoot me an email, and I'd gladly talk about it with you. So once again, I'm Steve Wilkerson, North American Director of Chemicals for Resource.